the next generation sequencing. Yay! So actually, I was talking with Dr. Nasser and with Ahmed, and I just realized that only 2 weeks ago we started doing our next generation sequencing panels, and now we have to start selling them. So next generation sequencing is kind of the future of the industry. It's gonna change, yeah, the dynamics of how we work. When it gets more and more popular, it's gonna change everything. Especially when we get introduced to the liquid biopsies, everything is gonna be liquid biopsy and next generation sequencing. And this is gonna let us go in the wide part or the largest share of the market. So just to let you know, the hematology and the medical oncologist, the hematologist and medical oncologist, we work only in almost 10% of his volume. So 90% of the cases he actually sees every day are not hematologic malignancies. They are lung cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer. So because remember when we said medical oncology is the main person who is responsible for a cancer case. So actually we are working in a very tight part of the market. And remember, guys, why are we working on this very tight part of the market? Cancer case. So actually we are working in a very tight part of the market. And remember, guys, why are we working on this very tight part of the cancer case? So why am I listening to myself? Yeah, now I understand. Okay. Sorry, guys. So so we are going after the hematology oncology clinics due to the fact that we can get the samples easily from the offices. So for the lung cancer, for the colon cancer, for the breast cancer, the medical oncologist is not the person who get the specimen that we can do the test upon. Most commonly, this patient, to get this specimen, he has to go to a hospital or he has to go to a surgical center to get this specimen out of him. Like either he does mastectomy or colonoscopy. Yesterday I was discussing a case with Vanessa, and the guy did a complete transverse colonectomy, descending colonectomy, and he removed part of the jejunum and part of the liver. Just to get he was doing a massive surgery, and we get the specimen, we get the samples. So basically, for all the solid tumors, it's not as easy to get the specimen as it is for the blood and bone marrow, because blood and bone marrow, the medical oncologist himself gets the specimen and he can easily decide where do they go. But for the surgical centers and for the hospitals, they have pathologists there. Those pathologists, and the lab that they have in-house has to decide where to send. So now we are going after the hematology oncology clinics because they are easy to get the samples from. The decision maker is only one person or two persons instead of the complicated process in the hospitals. And actually, due to the fact that we are not providing a lot of tests that the hospital needs, and they prefer to have a one-stop shop. So we are not yet appealing to the hospitals. But the main reason is because those samples are easy to get. But now with the introduction of the new paradigm in the sampling, it's called liquid biopsy. So we can, from a blood sample, we can do the tests for the colon cancers, for the breast cancers, for the lung cancers. So it's going to be easier and easier to get the specimens, and now we can call on all the specimens that the doctor provides. And how are we able to process those liquid biopsies? By next generation sequencing. So next generation sequencing and liquid biopsies are going to change the dynamics of our industry, how we work. Because now we can call on everybody. We can call on the surgical centers, we can call on the hospitals, we can call on all the specimens that the medical oncologists see. I actually was discussing it with Vanessa. We had an office here in Florida that see almost 80 patients per day. Just imagine those 80 patients per day. let's say 40 of them are going to do investigations, are going to do tests. So if we are getting their full potential from all those diseases, you can get easily 40 specimens from one doctor or from one office per day. So it's going to change everything. So back again I'm just trying to get you excited about the next generation sequencing, how it's going to change everything. But just for now, of course, we are not yet able to do everything that the next generation sequencing does. We are not getting the full potential of the next generation sequencing yet. But now, as of the last 2 weeks, we are able to do some of the panels of the next generation sequencing. So just to understand where are this in what we do in PsyParadigm. Remember, guys, in PsyParadigm we do 5 services. The first service is the morphology, which is done by the pathologist, and then the immunohistochemistry, and then the flow cytometry, and then the cytogenetics, and then the molecular. And remember when we said that the molecular is kind of the most specific tool. We look at the patient and at the case and at this cancer. So it's kind of the most specific, the very detailed information that we can get. Remember when we're talking about the diagnosis, what does the hematologist, oncologist want from a specialty lab like us? And we said he needs 4 pieces of information. He needs to know, is it cancer or not? And then he needs to know, why did this cancer happen? And then he needs to know how far or how bad this cancer is. And then he needs to know if this cancer is going to respond to certain treatments or not. So he needs 4 pieces of information. And molecular actually provides kind of a more detailed and a more decisive way of answering those 4 pieces of information. But as for now, so the entire target of the molecular department is to seek the change that's happening on the gene level. Remember, guys, when we were talking the last time, and when we were talking about the BCR-ABL gene, and remember the slide that said it's all the DNA's fault. It's either a chromosomal abnormality or a gene mutation. So the molecular is looking at the gene mutations. Remember, basically a gene is a arrangement or a sequence of base pairs, and the entire vision or mission of the molecular department is to find this sequence of base pairs. If this sequence is normal, means that this patient is normal. If this sequence is abnormal, means that this gene is mutant, and this patient most probably is going to have cancer. So the whole idea is about to find the sequence. If the gene sequence is normal or the gene sequence is abnormal. And this leads us to a whole new concept. What is sequencing? So, and this is how I am going to start today's. So I actually didn't have a lot of time to arrange the presentation today because I was just working on it yesterday and today morning. So I'm just trying to simplify the basic principle of sequencing. So basically, sequencing is, remember, this is the double-stranded DNA molecule, and we said the gene is a specific sequence of the nucleotide base pairs. So let's say this is a gene. This gene is, let's say, has 20 base pairs. Most probably a gene would have like 1,000 base pairs or something. Most probably it's gonna have a 1,000 base pairs or something. So let's simplify it and say it's like 20 genes here. So 20 base pairs in this genes. So the entire mission of the molecular department is to find, is this sequence is arranged in the right way or in the wrong way. So to know this, they have to do the sequencing process, and the sequencing process is simply, we want to know this arrangement, and we build on the fact that each pair is composed of 2 nucleotides, and they go in a certain arrangement to be complementary to each other. So the A on one side has to have T on the other side, and the C on one side has to have G on the other side. And this rule is really important. So if we have only one strand of this DNA molecule, it's really easy for us to know what is on the other side, what's the complementary strand of this DNA molecule. So this is basically the idea of sequencing, is we separate them and we start to know what is the sequence, what is the arrangement of those base pairs. So let's see this video. No, not this video. Please, so the first one you have to see, please go to the Showcase app. You will find another link that says sequencing. Please click on it.
To sequence a piece of DNA, you need the DNA you want to sequence, template DNA.
So it's a flash file. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to incorporate this flash file into the presentation. So please click on the link and see the flash file. It takes like 2 to 3 minutes. Watch it and then come back. When you come back, please say in the chat app that you've already seen it.
Karim, I don't see the link.
So click on the Showcase app.
Yes, Showcase. It's just this your screen with ABM, Materials for Life for Scientists by Scientists.
No, you shouldn't be seeing this.
The presentation that you just started.
So on Showcase, I see sequencing and next generation sequencing.
Yes, click on the first one, the sequencing link.
Okay.
So, Katrina, remember the third item on the left, the yellow one?
The yellow icon,
Click on it.
A primer that is complementary to the DNA.
Seeing something coming from the right. Has two parts, sequencing and next generation sequencing.
Or nucleotides with fluorescent tags attached for detection.
Please, guys, put yourself on mute.
No, Karim, I just see your screen. Can you send the link in just like if...
I can, sure I can.
Yeah.
I emailed you all. I emailed you the link, you guys.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Please put yourself on mute when you're watching.
Mm-hmm.
Karim. Guys, are you here?
Yes, Zoya?
Karim, should we go to the next one now?
Just, what's the next one? No, just watch this small flash file and then come back.
Okay, I'm back.
You done good? Okay. Nuran, welcome.
What's up? I'm here.
Okay. So click on the Showcase app because guys, they are watching just a flash movie, small flash movie. So click on the Showcase app. You'll find two links. The one is next generation sequencing, yay, and the first one is sequencing. Click on the first one, sequencing, to watch this flash file, and then come back. Click on the next link to follow us on the presentation. Okay. So we're still waiting for Ahmed, Lori, and Omar. And Zoya. Zoya, she said she is done. So I know, guys, it might be a little bit overwhelming, but no problems. Just watch it, and we're gonna go through another video and the third one, and you're gonna get start to get the idea. So don't worry. If you're done watching this, let's go to the next one. But just say done, so I can know.
I'm done.
And who's this, Omar?
Ahmed.
Ahmed, okay.
I'm done too, Kareem.
Okay, great. Nuran, so we're just waiting for Nuran for a minute. One more minute, Nuran, and you're gonna be. So you guys started to get the idea. Sequencing is just we are trying to separate the two DNA strands, and we build a complementary one, and now we know what was the complementary one. And this is the way how we sequence what's the exact one, what's the one that's in the sample, the one for the patient. because we now can know what's the complementary one for it. So this is basically the idea of sequencing. Now there has been an old way, it's called snagger sequencing. This snagger sequencing has been developed in the 70s, and it's been the authentic gold standard way of sequencing the DNA. It has been used for sequencing the entire human genome. It has been used in the genome project made by the NIH in the 90s. So it's the gold standard, and this is the one we used to use in the molecular department in Cyperdime as well. The old one, the snagger sequencing. The new one is called the next generation sequencing, which is the next generation of sequencing devices, which is simply NGS, or second generation sequencing. So let's go and see how the snagger one works. So now back to the presentation, and try to follow the video on the YouTube.
Next-generation sequencing, or NGS, is a powerful platform that has enabled the sequencing of thousands to millions of DNA molecules simultaneously. This powerful tool is revolutionizing fields such as personalized medicine, genetic diseases, and clinical diagnostics by offering a high-throughput option with the capability to sequence multiple individuals at the same time. Sanger sequencing, first developed in the 1900s, is a gold standard for DNA sequencing, and it is still used today extensively for routine sequencing applications and to validate NGS data. It utilizes a high-fidelity DNA-dependent polymerase to generate a complementary copy to a single-stranded DNA template. In each reaction, a single primer, complementary to the template, initiates a DNA synthesis reaction from its 3' end. Deoxynucleotides, or simply nucleotides, are added one after the other in a template-dependent manner. Each reaction also contains a mixture of 4 dideoxynucleotides, one for each DNA base. These dideoxynucleotides resemble the DNA monomers enough to allow incorporation into the growing strand. However, they differ from natural deoxynucleotides in 2 ways. 1. They lack a 3' hydroxyl group, which is required for further DNA extension, resulting in chain termination once incorporated in the DNA molecule. And 2, each dideoxynucleotide has a unique fluorescent dye attached to it, allowing for automatic detection of the DNA sequence. As a result, many copies of different length DNA fragments are generated in each reaction, terminated at all of the nucleotide positions of the template and the dideoxynucleotides. The reaction mixtures are loaded on the sequencing machine, either manually onto slab gels or automatically with capillaries, and are electrophoresed to separate the DNA molecules by size. The DNA sequence is read through the fluorescent emission of the dideoxynucleotide as it flows through the gel. Modern-day Sanger sequencing instruments use capillary-based automated electrophoresis, which typically analyzes 8 to 96 sequencing reactions simultaneously.
Okay. So again, this is the basic idea. I know it's overwhelming, but I'm going to simplify it in a way that resembles how it happens in the Sanger sequencing. So basically, imagine that I am playing a game with you, and this is a guessing game. So now I'm gonna have a number in my mind that you have to guess which number is this. But the only problem is this number is composed of 200 numbers. So it's something that I cannot even say how's it. So basically 19 is a 2 number, it's composed of 2 numbers. The one in my mind, it's composed of 200 numbers. And now you have to guess what is this. So basically the odds you get this number is almost nothing. It's almost 0. There's no way you can guess this number in my mind. But we are playing this game. I'm gonna start saying in my mind, not just in my mind. I'm gonna start. So the first number is 1. The second number is 4. The third number is 9. The fourth number is 8, and so on and so on and so on. So now I'm in my mind. I am describing how big this 200 number is, and then you interrupt me and you say, tell me what are you saying now in your mind? I'd say, in the 49th position, the number was 9. And then I start counting from the first position again. Say the first position is 1, the second position is 3, the third position is 9, and you interrupt me. Then when you interrupt me, I'd say the third position is 9. So now this guessing game can go on and on for decades till you finally get to know the what is the number in my mind. Now this is like the lamest game ever, the most lame game in the world, but it actually works for the DNA. It actually works for the Snagger sequencing. So they actually interrupted every time and gather a huge amount of information, and the computer analyzes it to come up knowing that in the first position it was A, in the second position it was C, in the third position it was T, in the fourth position it was G. But for each base pair, for each one of the base pairs in the sequence, you have to have a complete template that was interrupted at this position, and that's interrupted by the fluorescence nucleotides that we can read by laser. Is this making it any clearer? Now you have to unmute yourself and say anything, because I know it's a very, very overwhelming concept. But I just want you guys get the idea that it's very, very, very complicated, time-consuming process. This is the way we used to do it. But with next generation sequencing, it's completely different. Okay? Do you want to say anything before we proceed? Okay, I assume everybody has slept. Okay, so let's go and see how is it working with next generation sequencing.
Ion torrent technology takes an entirely new approach to sequencing, making it faster, simpler, and more affordable than ever before. Unlike other sequencing technologies, ion torrent systems sequence DNA using a semiconductor chip, similar to the chip found in your digital camera. While the chip in your camera has a sensing layer covered with millions of pixels that translate light into digital information, an ion chip has millions of wells covering those pixels. These wells capture chemical information from DNA sequencing and translate it into digital information, or base calls. The sequencing process starts when a sample of DNA is cut up into millions of fragments. Each fragment then attaches to its own bead and is copied until it covers the bead. This automated process covers millions of beads with millions of different fragments. These beads then flow across the chip, each depositing into a well. Then the chip is flooded with one of the 4 DNA nucleotides. Whenever a nucleotide is incorporated into a single strand of DNA, a hydrogen ion is released. This is how the ion torrent system sequences DNA, by reading this chemical change directly on the chip. The hydrogen ion changes the pH of the solution in the well. An ion-sensitive layer beneath the well measures that change in pH and converts it to voltage. This voltage change is recorded, indicating that the nucleotide was incorporated and the base was called. In essence, each well works as the world's smallest pH meter. The process is repeated every 15 seconds with a different nucleotide washing over the chip. For example, cytosine. A polymerase incorporates the C nucleotide in the DNA strand if a complementary G molecule is present. If the nucleotide is not complementary to the next base, no ion is released, no voltage change is recorded, and no base is called. If there are 2 identical bases next to each other, 2 nucleotides are incorporated, the voltage doubles, and the chip records 2 bases called. This process happens simultaneously in millions of wells. So regardless of whether you're using a chip with 1 million wells or 1 billion, the sequencing process takes only a few hours, a fraction of the time that it would take for traditional light-based sequencers. This process is also massively scalable. In just 2 years, chip output has increased 1,000-fold, with potential to increase even more in the future. By combining a simple chemical process with proven semiconductor technology, ion torrent systems simplify sequencing, making it faster, more scalable, and more accessible.
Okay. So now you think that this is kind of too complicated information. But we actually, I and Vanessa ran into a lab tech that mentioned that the Genoptics guy have been explaining this to her and providing her even with more studies and research studies to show how the next generation sequencing is going to change the way they diagnose everything. So I think we all need to know those kind of information. So this is a kind of very, very, very basic information because we haven't been to this concept yet. We haven't been knowing about this yet. It's going to take a long time. So let's say now you get some idea what is the difference between next generation sequencing and the Snagger sequencing. And I know it's still complicated. We're fine. We're going to go through this again and again and again and again. So don't worry about this. Okay, but I just want to, mention the differences between them when it comes to the application. So basically, the first thing is the speed, and you remember the watch in the last part of the video showed you that what takes 3 hours for next generation sequencing to do, it takes almost 38 hours for this Snagger sequence to do. So basically, the Snagger sequence can read only 1 kilo base pairs, like almost one, like the best one can read only almost 1,000 base pairs at a time, but by next generation sequencing, it's 300 billion bases of DNA. So you can imagine how massive this is working. So the whole idea, the secret word for this is parallel. It can do this in a parallel way. So it basically it fragments the DNA into very, very small fragments and can read all of them at the same time in a parallel manner. That what takes the Snagger only 1,000 pairs to do, then in next generation sequencing can do it for 300 billion base pairs. So this is the first part. And how is this gonna affect the way we act? So basically, to do anything by the Snagger sequencing the old way, we have to know what is the gene we are looking for. So the doctor has to send to the Dr. Nasser, like the hematologist, send to Dr. Nasser, please find me the BCR-able gene, because this is almost 1,000 base pairs. And we can only run this. So we run the device, we run the entire machine I'm not sure, it's almost like 2 days, to see if to sequence the BCR-able gene and see if it has mutation or not. But we know that maybe almost 40 genes are involved in the myeloid disease. So we can't run the entire 40 genes. We can't with the Snagger. It's gonna take forever to provide the results. But with next generation sequencing, we can run all of them and then find which one is mutant and while the others are fine. So it basically adds the idea of a screening for the mutant gene. We can run all the genes that might be involved in the process and screen all of them and know which one is the mutant gene. So it basically changes the way we deal with the molecular diagnostics. Instead of being a question that has yes or no answer, like is this gene mutant or not, yes or no, to like an open answer question, what are the genes that's mutated in this patient? And then you start saying the BCR-able gene, the KRAS gene, the NRAS gene. So it basically makes a paradigm shift in the way we look at the molecular diagnostics due to this kind of speed. So this is the first thing. The second thing is next generation sequencing is a lot cheaper than the Snagger sequencing. I'm just trying to mention an example here. So to run a full human genome, basically to run all the genes that in a human body, it costs us, with the best, perfect, most recent Snagger sequencing machine, it costs almost $6 million. But with next generation sequencing, it costs only $600. So it's of course it's not going to be like this in CyberDime, because this is a huge number of genes, but it's almost like 1 to 1,000 the price. So basically, it reduces the cost we need to sequence a gene. That's why we are able to sequence 40 genes for the doctor and only bill for the mutant gene. So we can run the entire 40 genes and bill only for one gene and get reimbursed only for one gene that's mutant. Or if there is no gene mutant, we're not going to be reimbursed for any of them. So and this is only because it's a lot cheaper than the other sequencing material. Still, we're going to get the same reimbursement if we do it by the Snagger sequencer or the next generation sequencing. We're going to get the same reimbursement from Medicare, but it costs us a lot, less than the Snagger sequencers. That's why we are able to run all the genes and get reimbursed only for the one that's affected. And the fourth part to compare between them is the accuracy. So basically, the next generation sequencing, it's more and more accurate and reliable than the Snagger sequencer, and the sample size. So for the Snagger sequencer, remember when I was saying that you have to interrupt me at each position in the numbers in my mind. So it's the same. You need a template, a DNA template for each base pair to interrupt and end at. And this has to be in million numbers. So basically, you need a very strong DNA sample that's in the blood. Preferably, it's from the peripheral blood. We can do it still on the aspirate from the bone marrow, but the molecular department prefers to have a peripheral blood for it. Now, let's say if we miss a pickup for a sample and it's delayed like for 10 days, now it becomes harder and harder for the Snagger sequencer to find the DNA that it needs. But for an NGS, next generation sequencing, it's a lot easier that we can still, for the very, very limited vivid DNA molecules in this sample, we can still run it and find the results and find reliable results in this sample. So basically, the NGS needs a very, 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 very small sample in comparison with the Snagger sequencer. Again, the sample we're going to have in CyberDime is going to be the same. It's the same tube and the same amount of blood. But for this same tube, it has less viable cells, but we are still, able to process the tests and find the results. And here comes the information that you have to know: the turnaround time. So basically, it takes us in CyberDime 5 to 10 days, while it takes our competitors almost 10 days. I'm talking about Genoptics. And Genoptics are kind of one of the fastest competitors. I don't know the turnaround time for this specific test by NeoGenomics, but I think it goes around this turnaround time. But why in CyberDime it takes us 5 to 10 days? So basically, I want to give you this idea. If we run the myeloid panel by next generation sequencing for a patient, and we run the entire machine for only one case, this case is going to cost us $1,000. And I'm talking real numbers. It's going to cost us $1,000. But if we run the same, the same cycle, the same machine for 8 cases simultaneously, it's going to cost us $154 per case. So we have to batch to decrease the expenses, because we're going to be reimbursed the same anyway. So we have to batch those cases together in order to be able to decrease the expenses. Now the rate that we have in CyberDime, almost the pathologists order the MDS panel once per day, almost once per day. If we are able to make it 8 per day, if we are able to sell this to the doctors and make them order this test. And if we are able to, increase the specimen that we get till we reach 8 cases per day, now that this turnaround time is gonna go down to 3 days. So why I say 5 to 10 days? Because this is exactly the case what happens with the CyParadigm. We run the batch every Monday, and it takes 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to be processed. So, and the results come back on Friday. So if you have a case, if you have a specimen that comes to that's done on Monday and shipped to the lab arrives on Tuesday, this is gonna miss the batch for this week and wait till the next Monday to be run, and the next Friday for the results to come out, and that's 10 days, even more than 10 days. So that's basically the largest like the longest turnaround time that you can get for the specimen. But if you're lucky and you get your specimen on the doctor does his bone marrow on Friday, and we receive the specimen on Saturday, we're going to run it on Monday, and the results come back on the next Friday. So the doctor does his bone marrow on Friday, and he gets to the results by the next Friday. You take the 2 days for the weekend, then the turnaround time is 5 days. Is it clear how is it going to be 5 days and how is it going to be 10 days in CyParadigm?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So this is basically the turnaround time for the next generation sequencing. I'm talking about the myeloid panel. I'm not talking about the solid tumors yet. So basically, to understand this, by next generation sequencing, we have panels for blood and we have panels for the solid tumors. But now we're not going to focus on the solid tumors. This is for later, discussing. But for now, we're going to focus only the blood panels. And for the blood panels, the myeloid, that's the problem of a bone marrow, and the lymphoid, that's problem of lymph node. So our competitors, they have the myeloid panel and they have the lymphoid panel. But in CyParadigm, we have only the myeloid panel now, and we are still validating our lymphoid panel. So the only panel that we are doing for the blood tests is the myeloid panel. And this myeloid panel consists of 43 genes. So the doctor is going to run the test, screening for 43 genes, trying to get the results and reports that are positive. Our competitors have kind of similar panels. Genoptics have a 40 gene panel, 40 gene myeloid panel. New Genomics, they have GenPath have a 37 gene panel, and New Genomics have 31 gene panel. So I think so far we have the highest number of genes in the myeloid panel. And again, I'm talking about the myeloid panel, not about the lymphoid panel. For the lymphoid panel has a lot more genes. Genoptics lymphoid panel has 75 genes. But talking about the myeloid panel, we have a 43 gene panel, talking about discussing the myeloid disorders. And this myeloid panel is subdivided into three sub-panels: the MDS panel, the AML panel, and the MPN panel. Now, when you look at the requisition form that you have in any of your kits, you're going to find the AML panel and the MPN panel, but you're not going to find the MDS panel. To ball this up, you have to have the molecular requisition form. That's only for molecular. That this one is going to have the MDS panel, AML panel, MPN panel. Now we have to change our requisition forms to involve all the information. But just for you, when you look at the requisition form, don't get confused. The normal requisition form has the AML panel and the MPN panel only, doesn't have the MDS panel, but the molecular requisition form does have the 3 sub-panels. Now we don't call it on our requisition form a myeloid panel. Genoptics does, GenPath does, New Genomics does. So you might run into a doctor or a lab tech that asks you about your myeloid panel. Now you understand this. You have a myeloid panel, it's not called myeloid panel yet on your requisition form. You would ask her to, to mark on the MDS, AML, or MPN, or just mark on the MDS, and the pathologist is gonna understand and order the entire panel. So this is basically the idea. Do you have any questions about this? This is a really important thing. I and Vanessa, we ran into lab techs that asks us these questions.
So when are we going to receive the updated requisition forms with all three? Or should we be receiving molecular recs for now?
I think
I just wanted to let you know that we're currently working on updating the requisition forms. Hopefully by the end of the week, I'm going to have an update for you.
Okay.
But this is something in progress that should be done very, very soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Great.
Karim, can I ask you? We already doing it, these myeloid panels, or we are going to do the starting from email, from Dr. Nasser's email. I understood that we are going to start doing this myeloid panels by next generation sequencing in October, or we are doing it now. I'm confused.
We are doing it now.
Oh, okay.
The myeloid panel, we are doing it now. I'm not sure actually if we are still validated in New York State or not, but for the other 49 states, we are validated. This is up and running.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm talking about the myeloid panel only.
Okay.
I'm talking about the lymphoid panel.
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
You guys should receive, I'm going to email you a list that has the 43 genes that we have. I'm now working on a comparative list that shows you the genes that we have in our panel in comparison with the genes that Genoptics has on their panel, and the genes that GenPath and NeoGenomics has on their panels as well. So you kind of see what's in, what's not in, because sometimes you can be asked the question, do you guys do this gene or not? Now you have the list in your hand, you pull it up, you look for it, or you have it on your iPad, you can just type the name of the test and it brings you if we do it or not. And you can see if Genoptics, NeoGenomics, or GenPath does it or not. Okay?
Great, that's good. Now, for now, we were emailed, Dr. Nasser emailed us the list of the genes, but it'll be good if you can email what the competitors offer as well.
Okay, now I'm still working on it. I'm not done with it yet, but as soon as I'm done with it, I'm gonna be emailing it to you guys. Okay. So we do some solid tumor panels, but not for now. I mean, we do them now for lung and colon cancers. We don't do them for breast. We don't do them for other solid tumors. But you don't have to worry about this now. You're not gonna have a lot of questions about this, because basically those questions are not gonna be coming from a hematologist, oncologist. Most commonly, some does. I have one account that sent me a colon specimen. And this is weird. I have been discussing it with Vanessa, and we've pulled up everything that they did, and we actually received the specimen coming from the hospital lab that was sent to NeoGenomics, and they arranged it, they've done it, and it came back to the hospital lab, and then it was sent to us. So this is kind of a typical case. It's not gonna happen. Most commonly, it's not gonna happen to you. You're not gonna get a lot of questions about this. Maybe further on, we're gonna be talking about those solid tumor panels. Who wants to say something? Somebody wanted to say something? Okay. So now the only thing you have to focus on that we do a myeloid panel by next generation sequencing. And this panel has 3 subpanels: MDS, AML, MBN, and the most important one is MDS. You're gonna receive questions about this. When you're asked, now you know what's the myeloid panel, what's MDS, what's AML, and MBN. And you're gonna receive the list, and the list is gonna be subdivided into those 3 panels, and each panel would show you what are the genes that's in this panel. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So now, what are the indications? What are the cases those kind of tests are going to be ordered? First, most commonly, this test is not going to be ordered by the hematologist oncologist himself. It's going to be ordered by the pathologist. And the pathologist has two main indications to order this test. So basically, Dr. Nasser or Dr. Saud, they are receiving a specimen. And they are doing the ordinary stuff. But when they look at the morphology, they look under the microscope, they can't tell if this case is benign or malignant, if this patient has cancer or not. They can't tell. Now, does this happen a lot? Yeah, this happens a lot. But then they would rely upon the results coming from the other tests they would do, the IHC, the immunohistochemistry, and the flow cytometry, and the cytogenetics. If those tests come with positive results, most commonly this patient has cancer. But if they come with negative results, does this rule out cancer? No. If the pathologist now has a doubtful case, he can't say if this is benign or malignant morphology, and all the other tests come in negative, this might be a very early case of myeloid disorder. He doesn't know. He doesn't know if this is going to be a leukemia or not. It might be early case, and it gives negative results by flow and cytogenetics. Previously, they would start doing gene by molecular, but now by next generation sequencing, it's going to order the entire panel. And if it comes all negative, this means this patient is benign, this patient is free, he's okay. But if it comes, some of them comes positive, this means this patient has mutation. Most commonly, he's going to have cancer. He's just in his early stages. So this is the most important indication. Dr. Nasser or Dr. Saud or whoever pathologist is going to order this. So he's going to look under the microscope. Remember, when we say the doctor, the pathologist, or is going to look at the specimen and orders the tests that are necessary. Now this is a necessary test. So this is the most common indication. The next most common indication is he needs some information out of those panel. When it tells him that certain kind of genes are mutant, this means that this tells him information about the prognosis. And by prognosis, I mean the progression of the disease, how bad the disease is. Is this patient gonna have complications or not? And when is he gonna have those complications? Recent, rapidly, or he's gonna live 5 years before those complication happens. So it tells him about the prognosis, how bad the disease is. And this information is really important for the hematologist oncologist. So those are the two indications where a pathologist would order this test. So this is the first question. The next question is the hematologist oncologist ever gonna order this test specifically? Yeah, it may happen. When he does a bone marrow, the results come back saying the patient's free, but he has a clinical picture of leukemia. The hematologist oncologist somehow he has doubts that this patient is not free. Now he's gonna order this panel just to make sure that the patient is free, to rule out cancer. This is not as common. This is not gonna happen because now most commonly it's being typical for the patient to have this panel if there's something suspicious. But it may happen. It may happen that a hematologist oncologist order this panel in a specific. So if the hematologist oncologist most commonly not gonna order this panel by himself, why are we making this all this 1 hour of details and boring stuff? Because basically now the hematologist oncologist needs to know deep in his heart that you do this to give him a precise diagnosis. He needs to make sure that you are doing this in your lab. And why are they interested? Because basically, so most of the doctors, they don't care. If you tell them this information, he's gonna be happy. But if you didn't tell him, he's not gonna ask about it. But why is he gonna be happy? Because the ASCO, which is the American Society of Clinical Oncology, for the past 2 years has been talking about this very intensively. The role of molecular diagnosis in the treatment of cancer patients, specifically in the medical treatment of cancer patients. The last one that has been in Chicago almost in May or April, I'm not sure. Last May, I think it's last May. The complete program for this conference, for the American Society of Clinical Oncology, was talking about the role of molecular diagnostics. So now the hematologists, oncologists are getting more and more aware and more interested to know that you provide those kind of tests. If he doesn't ask, but you mention this information, it's gonna, you know, meet something in his mind, you know, lighten a lamp in his mind. He's gonna know that, yeah, you guys do this kind of stuff. Yeah, I like this. This is the most important cause you have to know about this tests, and you start telling your doctors about. But the second most important one is Genoptics. Genoptics has they're all reps now educated about this, and they're going all around and educating doctors about this and telling them that we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. So they have a huge marketing campaign for next generation sequencing. They are telling the doctors all about it. And now when you go to a doctor and you start telling him about your service, he's gonna, you know, trying to compare between you and Genoptics. He's gonna say, do you guys do this? Do you guys do this panel, myeloid panel by next generation sequencing? Because he knows that Genoptics is doing this. NeoGenomics is doing the same. NeoGenomics claims that they have the widest panels in the States. And pretty much, yeah, they have like the largest panels for gene screening. So their reps are going very hard with the doctors, telling them about the next generation sequencing. So most probably you're going to receive a lot of questions about this. You have to be educated about this. So this is why you have to know about next generation sequencing. This is basically the idea. I hope you guys get some about the next generation sequencing. Now you know, you are more able to answer questions. We're going to go through all those kind of information with more and more details later on, but just for now, I wanted you guys to know some idea and about the next generation sequencing and what do we do in CyberDime. Thank you guys, and if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and share with us. Wow, no questions? Wow, this is interesting.
Actually, I have one question, Karim.
Go ahead.
You said that for like the myeloid panel, it's done on blood, right?
It's preferably to be done on peripheral blood.
I see. So that was my question.
So have peripheral blood
it can still be done on the bone marrow.
I'm sorry? Can you repeat this?
Could still be done on the bone marrow.
Yeah, sure. It can be done on the aspirate of the bone marrow, which is basically central blood. But they prefer to have peripheral blood.
Okay.
So if a doctor is ordering this panel in a specific, he doesn't have to do a bone marrow for the patient to send us a specimen. Most probably he's gonna do only peripheral blood. Okay. Any more questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a good week. And see you.
Thank you. I guess we'll come up with questions by the next time.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take a look at the information and probably we'll have some questions.
Okay, sure. If you have any question and you asked Ahmed or Dr. Nasser or whoever, please copy the ask mail in your questions.
Remember that.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Karim.